Dr. Sam Shay is going to talk to us about the work and addictions.
The title of this talk is The Work and Addiction, subtitle, Tame the Beast of Addiction. Now, how many of you, like me, have struggled with addiction personally? Okay, if we just all popcorn out, don't have what the vice was. Sugar, for me it was sugar, video games. Okay, settle down. Okay. So, responsibility. So as I can tell, this is quite an alive subject for people, and addiction is unfortunately one of the fastest growing issues we have in our world today. And the two ones that I'm going to track through this whole presentation are sugar and video games. Now, by track, I mean these are just the two examples, but you'll see the model fits for any addiction. And the two biggest vices that are expanding rapidly in our world today are sugar. Yes? We're getting there. The two fastest growing addictions in the world are sugar and video games. All right? So what you're looking at here is my model called Tame the Beast of Addiction. And you have a piece of paper in front of you, a summary of it. Now, BEAST is a 5-letter acronym, B-E-A-S-T, and it stands, this is the model of addiction, my definition anyway. It starts with the projector thingy being on. It starts with believing a stressful thought. From the stressful thought, you have an emotional, physical stress response. Does the beginning sound familiar? Then you anesthetize or numb out with a vice. Then smolder in the consequences. And smolder is not only a very apt verb, but it's also an acronym for the 7 types of consequences. Then T, have terrible thoughts about the consequences you just rendered from your vice. And if you believe those terrible thoughts, then you feel bad and want to numb out, and you have consequences, and you have more terrible thoughts, and if you believe those, and the cycle goes round and round and round. Does that make sense? Okay. So if you walk away with that, you just got the presentation, okay? So my story, my big stressful event began when I was 6 years old, when my parents went through a very ugly divorce. And I say ugly in air quotes because I've questioned that. But it was so contentious that one of my sisters actually ended up in the hospital with a bleeding stress ulcer. My other 2 sisters coped in their own ways. One of them just left the country and didn't come back for 13 years. Another sister just stuck her nose in a book. And for me, I stuck one hand in a bag of sugar, like M&Ms and Kit Kats, and the other hand on a remote controller or the television remote. Okay? So it started with TV because I didn't know video games even existed in 1986. So, and then very shortly thereafter, my father went to an electronics store and I saw the game Chopper being played on a big screen TV, which was a Sega Master System game. And this is, really, you don't even remember what a Sega Master System was. It was a big clunky box. It was Sega Genesis. It was the Sega brand's original competitor to Nintendo's NES. And that may all just be jargon to a bunch of you, but for old school gamers, you're like, oh yeah, you're starting to feel nostalgic, you know. And one story, this was in the late it was like 2008-9. I'm flying on a plane. I just finished teaching, I think it was like radiology or something. And I'm flying on the plane. I'm sitting next to someone, and I've been coming out about my issue with video games. And I'm sitting on the plane, And the person next to me is playing some physics game like Crush the Castle or some Angry Birds variant. And he's sitting next to me. So I'm sitting there, and it's like an alcoholic sitting next to a bottle of open beer, and the smell is wafting up their nose. So I'm sitting there like, and I get to a point where I muster all the diplomacy I can. And I turn to this gentleman who, the whole time I'm talking to him, he doesn't look away, he doesn't stop playing at all, okay? So I turn to him and say, "Excuse me, sir, this is going to sound really strange, but I'm a recovering video game addict, and me sitting next to you playing that game is like an alcoholic sitting next to an open bottle of alcohol, and it's wafting under his nose. And so I have one of two requests. A, would you be willing to put the game away, or B, would you be okay if I changed my seat? You have every right to play that game. This is my problem, not yours. I just want to know if you're okay with either option." And he kept playing for about 30 more seconds. Then, playing, then he hit the button to turn it off, put it in his pocket, reached over the armrest and said, "Hi, I'm a recovering alcoholic." And I'm looking at this hand reaching across the armrest, and it's so surreal to me. And at that point, my diplomacy cracked, and I said, "Really?" and he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Can I ask you some questions about your alcoholism?" And he said, "Sure, you ask me anything you want." And I said, Were you deceptive about your use? Did you lie to your family?" He said, "Sure I did." "Really? Me too." Did you hide like alcohol in different places and all that? And he said, "Yes, I did." "Really? Me too." And I went through all the nine major metrics according to the American Psychology Association's definition of addiction. Tolerance, deception, continuing despite consequences, getting upset when it was taken away. There's all sorts of official criteria. And what I realized in that moment, that addiction is addiction, the vice just varies. Okay, it was the exact same behaviors, exact same. So I went through my video game trajectory from Sega Master System to little Game Boys, and then computer games. I played my first online multiplayer game back in the early 90s. This is when there was no pictures, it was all text. A game called Medivia. That's why I can type so fast, is because if you didn't type, slay basilisk with sword fast enough, the basilisk nuked you. Okay? And this is just part of the progression, Like there's other games, Counter-Strike had just come out. And then I got so preoccupied, one of my sisters got worried, especially when I asked her for $140 to buy a digital character. Okay? So you imagine this is your 12, 13, 14-year-old brother asking for significant money to buy a digital character. All right, she got worried and performed a modemectomy. Now, this is the mid-90s. There's no Wi-Fi, there's no Ethernet. Okay, I can't go to a game shop or cafe. Once your modem was taken away, this was dial-up, you're screwed. Okay, it's gone, all right? Today, as I'll go into more detail, it's a completely different world. If you think you can just do a modemectomy, you can't. Impossible today. So I did find a way around it, like playing at friends' houses. I still had my non-online games like the Solitaire, the Minesweeper, Civilization 2, and all sorts of other games online. And as it progressed, I still kept playing, and the games just changed over time. One game in particular called ADOM took 2 years of my life. And I'm not talking 2 years like 2002 to 2004. I'm talking if I added up all the time I played over the approximate 15 years I had played this game, I'm talking 2 years, 24 hours a day for 2 years straight when I added it all up. gone, 2 years. And then I got into chiropractic school, and I was still playing some of this, and then I found the free flash games. Now, what you should understand is the games in the late 80s, like Alex Kidd in Miracle World, Zelda, all those games in the 80s that took a team of engineers are now, things like that are available for free online, put together by a college student over the course of a couple months. So the video game world is expanding rapidly. It's totally different than, say, drugs like meth, where it's meth. You don't have 400 different new varieties of meth coming out every single year, like video games, or thousands of different games, all right? So this caused me some problems. Health, relationships, career, mood, friends, and so on. Now, I just want to dwell a little bit on video games, all right, just to give you some stats. This is from the Entertainment Software Association's 2016 statistics. As of, this is like 4 days ago, all right? So the average game player is 35. How many of you here had the image, before I showed this, of, well, gamers are just a bunch of 17-year-old males playing shoot-'em-ups? Yeah, sorry to disappoint. It's wrong, okay? I want you to look very carefully here. 27% of gamers are under 18. 26 are over 50. Now, let that sink in a little bit. Now, here's the difference. It's genre. The difference in the games is the difference in the genres. My mother, 70-year-old retired medical doctor, was playing Scrabble and Boggle for hours on her iPad. We're beginning to see the difference here. Demographics differ in terms of the types of games they play. Candy Crush, for example, that's the mid-40s females, that over 35 females. These little casual games are designed to be played 5 minutes at a time as you're sitting there waiting for an elevator or something, or you're standing in line at the grocery store. All right? Most frequent game player age, 44. Male is 35. Women age 18 or older represent a significantly greater portion of the game-playing population, 31%, than boys 18 or younger, which is 17. It's not boys playing shoot-'em-ups anymore. Not by a long shot. Now, Blizzard owns Diablo, World of Warcraft, and many other big franchises. Why did they spend $5.9 billion on the makers of Candy Crush? I'll tell you why. It's because of this. Smartphones and the female demographic. Smartphones, in the sense that in the next 3 to 5 years, 5 billion people are going to come online in the entire world. And guess how they're going to get online? And when you combine that with the new wireless charging technologies that are being developed, these technologies are real, where you can charge a phone without plugging it in. You combine that with wide dissemination of cell phones. You've got Apple and Google and Amazon all competing to wire the world, whether it's through balloons or air balloons, satellites, however. You're going to have communities who will see smartphones in third world countries before they ever see paper. Think about that. What do you think are the first things that are going to be downloaded on those smartphones? Video games. All right? So what do? We understand what is the nature of addictive behavior. Now, when I say addiction, for the rest of the public, we think that usually the common thought is someone sitting in a corner shivering, vomiting in a bucket with needles sticking out of their elbow, right? It's a very loaded term, addiction. Now, if you want to define addiction, one of the best definitions I've ever read, the book was called It's Not Okay to Be a Cannibal, and by two authors. I am so embarrassed I can't remember their names. They're two UK authors. They say, replace the word addiction with the word cannibal, and you will now understand when someone has a real addiction. They cannibalize themselves, their environment, and the people around them for the addiction. It's destructive. All right? So when someone's being a cannibal, that means they're destroying. okay? Now, different gradations of that, you have compulsivity, just being habituated to it, binging, like this, all of those different words and behaviors, the same model applies, okay? How do we deal with each of these 5 phases? What I wanted to do was to construct a model that was easy to remember, that was empowering, that was simple, and that was, you could look at it and identify right away where you were at, and then have very simple ways to exit whatever phase you were in. So in the belief phase, we would look at resolving the root of addiction by questioning your stressful beliefs. In the emotional, physical stress response phase, this is where, you believe a stressful thought and then you get tension, anxiety, fear, grief, anger, rage, resentment, jealousy, even physical body pain. This is where you would increase your resilience by rebuilding your entire hormone system, brain, adrenals, body, biochemistry. This is where the functional medicine people come in, like myself, to help with addiction. If any of you people here have been to AA, they have this thing called HALT, hungry, anger, lonely, tired. Okay? Well, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, but they're missing gut health, physical body structure, meaning the spine. By the way, there's opiate receptors in the spine, just like there is in the brain. Dr. Holder had the most successful addiction clinic in the United States. He was a chiropractor, and he combined adjusting with multiple different facets. This is my model, not his. He's got a different set of things he does. But he does an entire functional medicine thing as well as dealing with beliefs and whatnot. But you adjust the spine, you also help deal with the integration of the opiate receptors. You look at their exercise, you look at their toxins. I'll have a bigger slide of this later. But you basically look at their entire natural health. You look at and look, genetics fits into this, epigenetics fits into this. If their mom if they had fetal alcohol syndrome because their mom drank, this is resilience. Now you'll notice it is secondary to the belief systems. Okay? You always have to back up the chain to here. But it's easier, if you have a better resilience, you can focus to help deal with this. In the anesthetize phase, this is where it gets vice specific. Here and here, it's not vice specific at all. Now, it's true, certain vices can affect your physiology very strongly in certain ways. Absolutely. But here's where it really gets vice specific. We restrict, remove, and replace the vice. In the Smolder phase, we reverse the damage and make amends. And in the terrible thoughts phase, this is where we reach out for help. This is where the AA people get their new recruits. Believe a stressful thought, feel stressed out, use a vice, have consequences, hit bottom. This is bottom. I have terrible thoughts about myself. These terrible thoughts are about what happened. I'm a bad person. I just ruined my job, my career, my relationship, my health, my energy. And if I believe them, see, that's a bottom. These thoughts, the thoughts that perpetuate the cycle, are not the same thoughts that start the cycle. Most people, when they try to recover, they focus on this stage, or this stage, all right? So when believing stressful thoughts, the top 3 in teenagers in regards to video games are, I'm bored, no one understands me, and the world is unfair. I'm bored, in my opinion, is the most sinister, subversive, stressful thought in humankind. Because people don't think they're stressed when they're bored. Does everyone catch that? Okay. Why is the work critical to this model working? And why do I think the work is the only method that I'm aware of that can successfully help addiction worldwide? It's because it's successful, it's simple, and it's secular. A lot of people have problems with the anonymous groups because it's too theological, and that level of theological emphasis varies on what part of the country and the world you're in, but it's still there. It's, most importantly, scalable. It's a meme. You can teach it verbally. It's on an app. Yes, the irony hasn't escaped me, all right? It's on paper, video, website. It's scalable. You can teach this to people. It's self-directed, and you don't need another person, okay? The work is absolutely critical for addiction to be resolved in the world as we know it today. For the emotional physical stress response, we increase resilience. This is a paper I found on the adrenal glands in regards to how it affects addiction. Adrenal glands control your stress response. If you are low, weak adrenals, you can't handle stress, so you reach for a vice to try to get stable. Or if you're too amped up, you reach for a vice to calm down. This is another framework I put together. It's called the 10 Pillars of Health. Would obviously be a very completely separate talk. This is how I look at patients, whether they're addicts or otherwise. I look at balancing their brains, their gut health, their physical body, their exercise, their toxins, their nutrition, their breakfast and routines, other things that influence stress, whether it's electromagnetic fields or clutter or overwhelm or having an overfill schedule. Bugs is gut flora and infections, and bedtime is sleep. So if we address these, then the resilience goes up. The anesthetize phase, this is where we identify the specific location, time of day, people, and circumstance when I reach for my vice. This is where I'm restricting access to the vice, hopefully removing the vice, or replacing it. Replacing is not cross-addicting. Cross-addicting is simply jumping vices. Replacing is consciously choosing a separate vice that is less damaging to consciously buy you time to back up the cycle to deal with your resilience and deal with your stressful thoughts. That's the difference between cross-addicting and replacing. Does everyone understand the difference? Okay, very important difference. Smolder is this is in a worksheet which you have a link to on the handout you have there. This is on the worksheet. It's just a piece of it. Smolder and the consequences. Each vice has very different sets of consequences based on your personal circumstances, your culture, the extent in which you use and otherwise. So we've got Smolder, societal consequences, monetary consequences, occupational, legal, domestic, energy/health and relationships. Obviously, video game addiction has a very different set of consequences, but the same categories as, say, alcoholism or meth or workaholism. Terrible thoughts. If you believe your terrible thought, you relapse. It's the difference between F it and F this. So F it is I'm gaming, and then I suddenly realize, oh my God, I can't believe it's 4 a.m. I've got a test tomorrow. This is me having terrible thoughts, and then I say, oh God, I'm such a loser, and I believe them, and then I feel really bad, and I just jump back in and play the game just a little bit more. And that literally looked like this. That quick, okay? That's F it. I'll just use one more time. Versus F this. F the situation, F this vice, F this damage, F my whole life. I need help. I am helpless in the face of my addiction. See, that's where the 12-steppers that's the entry point for 12-steppers. So that's the Tame the Beast of addiction. These are the R's: resolve, resilience, restrict, remove, replace, reverse the damage, and reach out for help. Questions? Thank you. What time? Yes, tomorrow. Okay, sure.
I'm increasingly disturbed by seeing toddlers and little babies being given iPads and iPhones to play with and screaming when they're taken away. It's like they can't handle it.
So two things to that. Number one, I wrote an article. It's on your resource list under, it says drsamshay.com/video-game-addiction. I wrote an article called The 5 Ways Video Games Are Used as Parenting Tools, How They Work and How They Backfire. It's a 4,500-word article. Before I published it, I had both my parents read it. Okay? I wanted to make sure it was fair, non-blamey, but fair. And the reality is that video games are so alluring as a parenting tool. It's, spoiler alert, I'll just tell you the 5. It's an instant reward. It's an instant form of punishment when you take it away. It's the cheapest babysitter you can have. It's a quick way to hit pause, like for 20, mommy needs to go have a nap, and here, go play your game. And this is the most common one, it's a lesser evil. At least he's not doing drugs, alcohol, gang, risky sex, or other mischief. It's a lesser evil. That is the most consistent response I get from parents. The other thing is Stan is actually going to be publishing an article about how he used video games to bond with his son successfully, that you can chat with. Yes? I understand that, and I agree with you, and it's actually quite damaging neurologically because of certain reflexes. If you're the technical geeks out there, it's called the tectospinal reflex, where their eyes dart to rapid changings in color, motion, and brightness, and it fires the stress response constantly. That's why you get glued to a video game or television or a screen, because you are neurologically, anthropologically helpless not to. Okay? Yes, in the back. That's you.
The bus over from the airport, I was with a couple and their maybe 2-year-old. And it was interesting to me, they wouldn't let the child look at their screens, and they were on them the entire time. And so I was sort of thinking like, oh yeah, you're not supposed to let your kids look at screens, but the kid was looking at them, looking at screens, very unhappy. And it was an interesting twist for me to sit with that.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi Sam, thanks for the presentation. I just wonder, I know there's a lot of changes at the moment with in our technology and everybody on social media, Facebook and all those. I wonder though, I spoke to my mother, she's 82, I spoke to my mother about when television sets were coming into Ireland, and there was the same sort of fear, There was I remember a GP or a doctor coming to our house to visit one of my brothers, and standing in the room and saying, oh, they can't be looking at that, it does weird things to their eyes. And I just remember there was a real fear around technology, and I wonder, are we just in a new age of that? And we're in a lot of unknowns of the future. But there's so much good in that as well. There's so much good in screens and education and learning, and like my son plays Minecraft. There's lots of stuff that's good in that too. And it's good to remember that too, rather than demonize it. And I'm not saying you are, but it seems, oh, look at them on the screen. And I know I have to catch myself and not be panicked by screens, and because it is our future. It is. We're moving away from a lot of paper. And I know people don't really like that, but it's kind of the way things are going, and I just wanted to highlight that.
I would agree with you. Screens have done amazing things. I mean, we're here looking at stuff because of a screen, and the context is addictive, destructive, cannibalistic behavior where it's destructive. It's like food. Is food destructive or is it helpful? And it all depends on dosage and type. And one's emotional connection to it. And like with anything, even alcohol, they used alcohol to sterilize ship decks. Is alcohol bad? Well, it depends on how it's used, How much time we got for questions? 1 minute. Okay, who wants to be last?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I have just one question. The phenomena of craving, where is it in this model?
There.
Between the two.
When you believe a thought, you create the craving here. It's the emotion, it's the desire to anesthetize the stressed out, the emotional physical stress response. Craving is a physical sensation which is driven by stress beliefs pounding on the physiology, creating a body response which you experience as craving. Ultimately, cravings are in the mind, but we think it's in the body.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.